Good afternoon to all. Today we have with us alumnus Om Khurjekar as our third speaker of this webinar series. Good afternoon, Om, and welcome to the International Alumni Series of MNCOA, 5 days, 5 alumni, and 5 countries. In spite of busy schedules, varying time zones, and other logistical challenges, Om graciously accepted our invitation to become a part of this International Alumni Series. Thank you, Om, and welcome again. Om Khurjekar is the principal partner and board member of Board Copland Marsh, bringing over 23 years of experience in designing diverse landscapes and architectural projects. He is known for his expertise in creating public parks, interpretive play environments, campus landscapes, and urban streetscapes, all while emphasizing the seamless connection between landscape and architecture. Om's clients and colleagues appreciate his passion for design, attention to detail, and candid nature. His remarkable work has earned numerous awards and accolades, notably from the Maryland and Potomac chapters of the ASLA, Preservation Pennsylvania, Maryland Recreation and Parks Authority, and Lux Interior Design Magazine. Before his successful career in the United States, Om practiced as an architect in Pune, primarily focusing on residential and institutional projects, actively involved in the American Society of Landscape Architects, ASLA. Om has served in various leadership roles, including President of Maryland and Chapter President's Council at National ASLA. He currently represents MDASLA as a chapter trustee and serves on the board of trustees at National ASLA. Additionally, he also serves in various educational advisory boards and award juries for ASLA chapter programs. Om enjoys sharing his knowledge with the next generations and has served as a lecturer and design critic at Morgan State University, University of Maryland College Park, and other notable institutions in the United States and of America and India. So here I would request Om to start with his presentation. Before we start the presentation, I want to remind the audience that please post questions in the question answer tab and also fill out the feedback form before the session ends, shared in the chat box. Thank you. Over to you, Om.
Good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. Well, it's great to be here. Thank you very much, Aarti ma'am, for coordinating this. I don't think I ever thought that I would be speaking in front of the next generation of my own school once upon a time, and especially when I'm practicing here in the United States. Looks like there's a lot of people, joining, and I see at least one friend of mine or my batchmate and a good friend on here. So I have a very, I wouldn't say a long presentation, but I was listening to the two talks that happened on 7th and the 8th of August. And if you all may recall, there was a variety of scales, starting from Mr. Saqib showing from 1:100 to the interiors. And then Ms. Natasha showing a different scale of projects, back in UAE. My work really has been at, I would say, probably the 1:10 to 1:20 scale, and sometimes going to the quarter scale. So it's a very different type of practice. So just as an agenda, the United States, which is located on the eastern seaboard. It's a journey that I never planned. give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen so you all can see it. Can see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. So it's been an unplanned journey. I never thought I would ever come to the United States. I did know that I was going to become an architect, or I wanted to, ever since I was, 3 years old. One of my uncles is an artist, and he had created a um, a model for our bungalow that I grew up in Pune. And if you are familiar, you're a Puneite, you would know where Parvati is. And my house is still there, and I have family back home, and friends, and a lot of people, but we still live there. And there was a model in my house that I always played with because I had nothing else to play with. There was a lot of construction after we moved there, so there was a lot of dirt and rebar and sand and rock and everything, as you know. So when I look back at it, maybe that was the reason I wanted to become an architect. And fast forward many years, I went to architecture school at MMCOA, and then after 5 years, it just kept going, and suddenly I came to the United States, and I'll tell you the story in a second. The reason for this topic, which is sort of funny to me, is blueprints to blooms. Is when I started working, it was actually, there were blueprints. We did make blueprints. We did make ammonia prints. And then suddenly, life transitioned into the world of landscape architecture. And not that I just plant flowers, I do much more than that. It's really has come down to the blooms, and the seasonal interests, and creating places for people that are social, that are bringing people close to nature. And really sort of contributing to the planet in a different way. So let me try. So funny, I found some old pictures of me and my journey, and this is where I started on the left with our dog, and then life happened, and then I became a little chubby after graduate school, and then now I'm old and bald. But in between that, there's a whole life of making friends during school. We still stay in touch pretty much 365, 24 hours a day, thanks to WhatsApp and all the media that we are now exposed to. But it wasn't the case when I was growing up. And I started with most of you may not even know, but something called ECTV, which was a black and white TV. And today, my mom can call me for free on video, and we can all meet via Zoom pretty much instantly. So it's an interesting journey to me. It was good to reflect back as a result of this talk. This is all boring stuff, but just a quick thing. So I did my bachelor's of architecture at MMCA, and I did my master's in landscape architecture at Morgan State University in Baltimore. It is actually the oldest HBCUs in the state of. There's a typo. It's the only HBCU in the state of Maryland. Actually, one of the oldest in the state of Maryland and in the country. And HBCUs are historically Black universities. The program at Morgan State is the oldest and the only one for years as a graduate school in landscape architecture. And I actually, after my B.Arch, I worked at my guru, I call him, Rajiv Vishwasarau's office. I was very lucky to find a job there and be exposed to the real world of architecture with Rajiv sir. And then when I came to the United States, I interned at a couple firms, and then landed at Fort Copeland in 2001. I am registered in 3 states and will be registered in the 4th. And I think I also keep my Indian Council of Architecture registration to my knowledge. It was a cultural shift. One, it was a education shift. But I came here for my master's in architecture, and 4 days later, and I was walking through the studios of Morgan, and I found the landscape architecture program. I sort of reflected back on my education and my exposure. And Rajiv's work was with Charles for a long time, and even some of at Ayuka and other projects, and that exposed me to a very different world of architecture. It was sort of this interstitial space where go from inside to out and outside to in. And so I started thinking in those 4 days that why would I want to just learn more architecture? And why wouldn't I explore the world of landscape architecture? Thinking that I would be able to practice both in the United States if I ever stayed here. I wasn't sure if I would stay here because I wasn't planning to come here in the first place. Anyway, fast forward, by now, I've been at Hoard Copeland Macht for almost 21 years. 22 years. I started as an intern, and now I'm a principal and partner. And last year, I was elected to the board of directors of the firm. On the right side, there is a few projects. There's many projects that happened in 22 years that I was part of. But these are some of the projects that are close to my heart. They all are, because they're all my children. But at the same time, these are some of the notable ones that come to my brain. So although I've practiced in all market sectors, I currently specialize in public parks, and some of them are waterfront parks. Some of them are local parks, and a lot of universities. And you can probably see there's a lot of notable names of schools on this list. Oops, sorry. Oh, now I need to click the other way. And then just a snippet of all the awards that we have won through the years. I also serve on different boards. As Arti Madam introduced, I'm part of the American Society of Landscape Architects, locally and nationally. I was president. Then I became president of the National ASLA President's Council. I also served as adjunct faculty at Morgan State, and then after 6 years of doing that, I got busy, and I did not think I did justice to the students, so I actually quit and started with more being part of the critiques, and then so when I look back, I always want to reflect back. Is where did the journey of architecture begin for me? As I said, it began at age 3 at home a little bit. And then it began in MMCOA. And through that, I sort of identified, there were some indirect and some direct influences as I went from architecture to landscape, and now sort of a holistic approach to life. On the left, you can, everyone of you probably know this. Charles was a big influence for me. I never met him. Actually, only met him once, probably very briefly. But his work, and Rajiv sir's collaborations. We had started working on a piece of Ayuka when I was there, and then I left. So Charles has been a great influence, and the work of Charles is known to the whole world, and what a great human he was, and the creations that he had, and the influence and the impact in the world of design and architecture and public realm is incredible. And then on the left bottom is Peter Walker. If you have known, I've also met Peter only once, but I know a lot of people who have worked there, and I've been following his work after I came here and began my journey as a landscape architect. I think he is up in his 80s, and they still do amazing work. And I have been really influenced by that. And then at MMCA, of course, my teachers, many of them. I'm not sure how many are on this online today. But then my direct Rajiv was an amazing influence. He still is. We still talk and make fun of each other, or he makes fun of me. But he's taught me a lot. He taught me how to think in a very different way. He taught me how to look at architecture in a very different way. It went from the dreamland boards to the reality, and that has been sort of the stepping stone into the next world. On the right is Mahendra Parekh and his wife, who were, I consider them my parents in America, because they almost adopted me. And Mahendra retired as the Dean of School of Architecture and Planning, acting Dean of School of Architecture and Planning at Morgan State University after teaching there and practicing for 4 years. And he never really directly taught me, but he was always there. I used to talk to him probably 20 hours a day when I was in school, because I had no one else to look up to. And he is an amazing mentor. Then he made a life decision to move to Nandigram in Gujarat. And he has his own, he lives in an ashram with his wife, and they've designed their own house. And they have also, provide a lot of service to local people, and they also have a center for art and design that a lot of students are involved in. So the teaching continues for Mahendra, and I was able to visit him last year when I was in India, and it's been an extremely great experience. In between both of these is somebody named Ash Parekh, who you may know, and he practices in Pune. And if Ash hadn't come to our school when I was in my fourth year, or fifth year, I would have never met Mahendra, because Ash is a Morgan alumni who had practiced in the United States and come back to India to practice. And so if I hadn't met him, I probably would have never met Mahendra. So life is a series of connections. You never know who you meet. You never know what it's going to bring to you. So that's lesson one. And then Thomas Balsley, as I started working at Hort Copeland Markt, I was 31 years old, and I had just started dabbling into the details of landscape architecture. Our practice, you will see, is a very detail-oriented practice. And Thomas Balsley, he's a fellow of American Society of Landscape Architects, and he is one of the best landscape architects I've ever known. He's internationally famous, and his firm is SWA Balsley. And they do amazing public parks. They are just incredible designers. And, I had the pleasure of working with Tom directly, not working for him, but collaborating with him on a project that I'll show in a second. And then the next two people are my mentors. Carol, I met her. She was my boss. She just retired, and boss and a partner. And she really influenced my work as a landscape architect, and so did Chris and Julie. And Chris and Julie, I still work with them. They're my partners, and I, amongst others. But we work very closely, and so that was sort of the inspirational stories of my life, which again, they just came to me, and I took the opportunity to sort of embrace those. And then, of course, we all look for inspirations and things that that you see. And it started with Ayuka on the left. It not ended, but it sort of transformed with Center Park on the right. And I have always been really a fan of Spanish architecture, and Alhambra is that iconic place to visit. And after living here for 24 years, the first time I was able to visit Alhambra last year, actually the beginning of this year, and it was an amazing experience. I did not want to leave, and I think want to go back every year for 3 months if I can, which is probably not possible, but that's my dream. So going to Port Copeland Mott, as I said, I started in Denver. In 2001 in Baltimore. And the story is unique because our firm has a unique beginning. It was two architects and one landscape architect, Ed Horde in the center on the left, and Lee Copeland are architects. Ed specialized in a lot of housing, especially senior living and affordable housing projects. And Lee was into healthcare architecture. And then Carol was their friend who was the landscape architect. So the story started with two architects and one landscape architect, 46 years ago, with three people who started, put up their sign and started in a townhouse. And the firm graduated to now 340 people with 5 offices across the nation and work all over the United States. And this 340 is a very diverse team of people that includes architects, landscape architects, planners, graphic designers, interior designers, and our supporting accounting and marketing colleagues that help us get through some of these things. So it's turned from 3 to 340, a big organization. But the beauty of it is that, and we have 5 market sectors at Horde Copeland Mott. The beauty of it is it's still a very small firm in many ways. Especially landscape architecture. We've kept the group together. We are 21 of us, half in Baltimore and half in Denver currently, and one in Massachusetts. But we have a lot of fun. It's an amazing group of individuals with different skills, age ranges, and experiences. And these are some of the fun things that we do, and site visits, and crack up and go drinking, and all of that, and win awards, and do good work that really touches our soul, really makes a difference in our opinion, creates environments that are meaningful to us and to the users. We're an integrated design practice: architecture, landscape architecture, planning, interior design, graphic design, and sustainable design. And these are some of the statistics of who we are. That's my office, and we have 5 of them. So, but this is where I currently work. It's in downtown Baltimore. We look at the Inner Harbor. We actually have 360 views of Baltimore. We are on the 12th floor in a historic building that actually used to be a Social Security Administration building, then turned into a Coca-Cola plant, and then turned into a warehouse, and then turned into an office building. And it's interesting, I actually started working in this building when I started my internship. And then we moved out of there to the next door. And then again, life comes back in a circle. When we grew big, we decided to consolidate all the offices into one office in every city. So one office per city. And we came back to the same building on the top floor. And it's been an interesting thing ever since. So if you ever come to Baltimore, call me. I will take you for a tour. And as I said, we're a firm in a firm, and this is our current team of people. A couple have left, and few have been added. But this generally gives you a sort of a diverse set of people, different culturally, locally, and from other parts of the United States, and some from the world in the firm. Our firm always has been an international firm in terms of its people. I have friends from pretty much all over the world who I've worked with for many years. They're still there, and it's a very life-changing experience especially for a boy who came from Pune, never left his home until 21, and so it has been an interesting experience. So, like anybody else these days, we our design philosophy is guided by why, how, and what. And because of our interdisciplinary practice, how is sort of related to that. And we still believe in party and concept generation. Our design process is very inclusive. It includes a lot of stakeholders, especially the clients and the user groups, and in each market sector, not just landscape architecture or parks or work, but pretty much in every. And we do work in healthcare, multifamily housing, planning. We have projects, obviously, a very big healthcare practice. Interior design feeds into all of these things, and landscape architecture also feeds into all these market sectors. However, as I explained, we have our own portfolio of public parks that we always have been practicing. So if I have to break the work into two pieces, it's really 45% of our work is our own work, and we often hire architects and interior designers to work with us on some of these things, or the rest we sort of become support and partners in their projects. So there's never a dull moment in my life, because we're always doing something different, and life is busy, but life is fun. And we are storytellers. We like to tell stories. We like to tell stories of the local ecologies, the local culture, the context, and really tie things into the site. As Carol always has said to me, and I truly believe that when we work on a project, when we are done with it, if somebody that cannot tell what we did, and it feels like it was always there, then we have done our job. So that has stuck in my brain, and I try to always make sure that the projects are seamlessly integrated and they serve the user group. It's about design, but it's about design for people. And I think that's an important thing to remember. I also think that and I'm sure I'll offend somebody, but the time of me, the architect, is gone, and it's time of we, the designers, has come. And so you will see firms across the world, and through many talks and speeches that you hear, there's a lot of collaborations going on. There's a lot of expertise in architecture. There's a lot of allied professionals who are contributing to the built environment. And I think our job is to really sort of understand and work with them and tell these stories. So we at Hoard Copeland Mark aspire to create a better future by clear, purposeful design solutions through diverse perspectives, the power of place, and the importance of craft. We continually challenge the familiar to discover the unique. Through diverse perspectives, together, we discover the joy, the spirit, the poetry, and the unique. Our process is really begins with the discovery of purpose. We want to understand the vision and the values of a campus or a park or any institution we work with, clients. Discovery of experience to active listening. And experiential discovery. We explore the user experience and the spirit of place. And then we often go back and measure the impact of our work. And we did not do that in the first sort of decade of my work there. But now, as we become bigger and with more resources, and we need to keep up with the world, which we already did, you have to go back and really examine how your projects are performing, especially in landscape where it's nature. You're dealing with nature. You're dealing with life, and life changes. And life changes due to impacts of weather, impacts of soils, impacts of maintenance, users, vandalism, etc., etc. So landscapes change. Buildings can stay static, but I think that buildings change over the years. But definitely the landscape. So it's purpose, experience, and effect. And then we use a lot of tools. We have 9, 10 3D printers. We have visualization tools, and we have a team of now visualizers that help and work with us to create amazing 3D views. We ourselves, my team, I still draw a lot on my iPad, but my team, there's a lot of people who can do these things, and we use some very up to the market technology to kind of help our clients with these experiences. So here's a short process. We go from massing and form to texture and function and to built environment, and then rendering the real experience. A lot of times we'll use QR codes so that you can actually the clients can actually move into the model and check it out on their phones when we are presenting. And it's a live experience as you go into and inside out of the building. And so it's still like school. We always have a full design kickoff meeting. There are pinups in our offices, which involve entire teams of those projects. But then we invite outside juries into the project, so that there's always a fresh eye, there's always a fresh perspective. It's a moment, it's a page turn, it's a moment to sort of stop, think, and sort of validate the party that we created in the beginning. And so it's a very interesting process. It's pretty fast. So life is pretty fast, and there's sometimes no time to breathe, but we still aspire to do good. We still aspire to do the same process that we all learned in school. If you want to believe the architecture education, at our school, at MMCOA and everywhere else, there's always pinups, there's always juries, there's always sort of those critiques that bring the best out of your work. So the process is pretty similar, and we try to follow that in our offices all the time. And there's a lot of involvement from senior staff, and really an opportunity to educate the next generation, be spontaneous, and really kind of have these checkpoints as we move through design and construction. And during construction too, we provide construction administration oversight, where we are involved. So most of my projects that I will show you in a second are going to be all inclusive. I don't stop working on them until they're done. So really, it's from the first line to the last brick experience. So lots of words and lots of sort of boring slides, if you will. Now to some fun. So what I did was I took my 22 years and I said, 4 quarters and 5 projects that are close to my heart. They're all close to my heart, but these are some of the ones that I really enjoy, and they made an impact in how I work, how I think. West Shore Park, I call it my second master's in the United States. As I said, I was 31 years old, and this was a collaboration with Thomas Balsley Associates, 2 designers and 8 more consultants and 12 stakeholders. A big city park right on the inner harbor of Baltimore, 3.5 acres, and the design to completion time was 18 months, because the park had to open for a international sailboat race that ended in the inner harbor of Baltimore. I lost 14 pounds, side note, walking from my office to the inner harbor. My office is right here, and my office is right here, and the park is here. So I walked back for almost 9 months every day to check out the construction and what was going on. Inner harbor is very famous. This is the National Aquarium in Baltimore, if you want to look it up. And then that's the bay, the back bay that comes into it. This is a very active waterfront with public parks and, constant redevelopment of areas. And this is on the left is the CBD of Baltimore. My house is up north in Towson, so 20 minutes from here, north of Baltimore. This is the park plan. The park is it's oriented towards the water. So the party was pretty simple, where we had this is Light Street, which is a very busy street coming into town from Washington D.C. into Baltimore. So extremely busy. So we had to create a buffer. So there was a buffer between the very busy street. A bus lane for people to come from different parts and tours to land, and then another buffer that separated the vehicular traffic. So buses come in here and they go out over here, some parking over there. But this was where the park, sort of the green edge separated that from the bus lane and the traffic lane. So layers of, linear layers of trees and plantings separated and carefully integrated into the plan. And then the plan really is a center, sort of open space that is a performance space with a fountain that, sort of brings cheer and joy and helps people cool down in summers. Baltimore summers are very hot and humid, just like Mumbai. And so, water is an important element that is part of this park. And then the green arms, I call it, of this park that sort of focus your view towards the water, and then the edge along the water is articulated to have barrier-free access from the promenade into the park. All edges are useful. You can sit in many different places. The park generally is raised 3.5 feet from the promenade, so it sort of sits on a promontory. So you're up here and you get amazing views of water, boats, and people walking by. 2 kiosks that bring food and water and things to the park users. And then the central open space is programmed to create a lot of, new functions. And there's an ice rink in winter that people come and visit. So it's a pretty active park. And I was involved in the design, but also doing all the construction documents. This project is as intense as a building. It has all the parts that a building would have, except for the roof. And the roof here is the sky, and the walls here are the trees, and the planting is the furnishings and the embellishments. But really a nice place to be. It is probably the largest precast concrete job in the Baltimore Inner Harbor. Every piece carefully detailed. That was the site before the park was built. The visitor center of Baltimore is on the left and Maryland Science Center on the right. So it bridges the gap between these two important buildings. And that's when it was built. Lots of plantings, lots of trees, shade on where you need it, seasonal interest, textures, and just a place for people. Lots of places to sit, enjoy. The fountain is on, creates the front yard of Baltimore. A place for people. As I said, it's a programmed open space. People come, they sit on the seat steps, lots of places to sit along the water, at the water edge, at lower level, upper level. It just happens. And then obviously yoga and other events that happen, movies are shown. And then a place for everyone. It's a place that all are welcome. And the beauty of the park is that there is barrier-free access points on every side of it. So it's fully ADA. And accessibility is an important thing. And some of my friends talk all over the nation in India regarding accessibility and the importance of it. And so this park, each one of our projects is fully accessible from all edges. and sides. And then just kids having fun in the water. And the fountain was a phase 2. So we built the park and we opened it up 2 years later and put the fountain in. But the footprint of the fountain was always marked. So there was always this notion of, okay, there is a fountain. We don't have the money yet or the time. Let's build it, come back in. So this fountain has 53 jets that are synchronized on music and lights. And it has 3 big walls underneath the earth, back where these benches are. One for water, 900 gallons of water. One for bromination to clean the water because people get into it and we want to think about health safety, and that's a code. And then one for all the equipment in here, and all the music is controlled back into this building. So there was a lot of sort of opening up of these, the park paving, creating these connections back, putting these walls down, and then completing it back and sealing it up like nothing happened. And it's a popular place to be. And even almost 15 years later. South Capitol Park came after that. It's a 6-acre historic park in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. If you've heard of Hershey chocolate, it's just an hour and a half south of Hershey, Pennsylvania. I'm sure everyone has heard of Hershey chocolates. So it was a long process. We started with the master plan for this historic park. It is over 100 years old. It has 104 mature trees. Tree preservation is something we take it very seriously. This was a historic preservation job, so it had to cater for those things. It had components of historic fabric materials that had to be preserved, cleaned and reinstalled in it. So back here, Baltimore is right there. Pennsylvania state capitol is right there. And this is where all the politicians come, all the state politicians come, all the governmental business happens. The complex is pretty big, all of it, and 6 acres of it is the park site. This is how it looked in 2008, pretty desolate. This is a winter shot, so it makes it look even horrible, but just sidewalks and uninspiring, sort of places to sit, but a lot of trees, and then 2 important monuments, the Mexican War Monument and then the Hartranft Monument. And no streetscape. There was no edges to this place. You could not walk all along these edges of the park. So the only access points were here and here. So it was sort of uninviting, and there's a lot of erosion happening. You can see some existing photos of all of that. So we had to start with the master plan where it all began. We did a lot of research, historic research about the project. We came up with a master plan document. As we looked at all these existing conditions, what was originally planned, what was the original components of it. There's a lot of granite stairs and walls and things that were historic and had to be preserved. And that was our park plan. Very simple, keeping all the existing trees, creating a new streetscape all along all the 3 sides, creating new walls that held up and prevented erosion, and then creating places for people. The big oval is the Mexican monument, that walkway that leads you back to the main Capitol building, and then the Hartranft with its plaza, vehicular access from the left, and then new and access points up here. The interesting thing about this park was there was no accessibility to the park for people in wheelchair or who had who could not get up into the park. They had to come all the way in a car in it. And this is the Capitol. So we created, with all these trees, we created a nice ramp that comes in and nestles into the trees and brings people from, we studied the pedestrian movements where people are coming from, and that was the place to put it. So 104 trees were saved. When I say tree preservation, it's not just putting fences and preserving the trees. For this park, which was a 5-year process, 3 years of construction, which was phased from March to October because it gets very cold in other months, and construction is not possible, or it's not advisable to do any pouring of concrete and other things in that weather. We had to phase it, so it had to open, do one phase, close it like nothing happened, and then open it again. And so it was a very intense process of coordination, observation, collaboration. It was 9 consultants that we led through the process. There were no architects involved in this one, but civil engineers and lighting consultants and arborists. And all the trees in the park had to be prepared. Just like you get, before surgery, you have to get some injections to beef up your body to take the impact. All these trees were fed before we started the construction. And a lot of interesting tools were used to preserve the root mass, sometimes cut the root mass, and then they were fed with nutrients, after every phase of construction and a year past that. And that's what it looks like. The new park, the new monument, the new place for people to sit, enjoy. There's a lot of tours that come here. This is sort of, turning into fall shots, so you can see a little bit of leaf turning. The accessible ramp that's nestled into the park fabric, new sidewalks. So this is old, and all of this is new. So there was a very conscious effort to, kind of use materials that will fit into the park, and lots of new plantings that helped solve the erosion problem. New granite walls that are sort of local granite. We believe in sustainability, so we want to bring materials to the projects that are very, very local and then local plantings or native plantings and adaptive plantings. And so it creates an environment. So really the idea was that it should feel like it was always been there. So a lot of details to be worked out. It was a big team of 7 landscape architects who worked on this project along with me. And then, as I said, I think 8 or 9 consultants. And then the cherries, the cherry blossoms. It's a festival. It becomes a moment in spring when the cherries bloom. And that's looking at the park from the corner. So any of these things, all new sidewalks, new walls, new plantings, new paving. One interesting fact was that the paving had to be exactly in the same place. Some of the walkways had to be exactly in the same place. So there was a survey done. We made sure that these footprints are not violated because they were historic. There was a moment in time that they were created. So that was very important. And then nice walls that kind of created these tiers of planting, helping slow down the water erosion. And then what you don't see underneath all these sidewalks are stormwater systems where water is retained, filtered, and then returned back to the city grid, city system. To a very different scale. So from 3 acres of a public park to 6 acres to a historic park, different sort of, programs and intents. This is a residential project. Often we don't really do a lot of residential projects, but every 2-3 years, we get an opportunity to work on something very interesting. This was a 2-acre plot with 2.5 years of design to completion. It was designed for one person. The house was 5,500 square feet, and the site was that. And it was an extremely steep site. It's located not far from my home. My home is right here. My office is right there, and it's a 20 minutes drive to it in an old neighborhood that really has this sort of mid-century modern homes, and it's one of its kind, and you can see it when you move through Baltimore. And that's how it looked like. It was overgrown. It was just in a horrible state. Nobody's fault. It just had been lived in forever. And this was our plan. I call it the upside down. This was a collaboration. What I did not mention earlier, that a lot of our collaborations are with also other firms, other architects. So we are not just collaborating with architects inside our firm, but our practice includes collaborating with other firms. And yeah, this was the case. We worked with this very amazing design firm here in Baltimore town who do just beautiful, houses. This was an upside down house. The grade change from the street down to here is almost 22 feet. So it's a steep, it sort of has a little level area, and then it's slopes down to a stream, actually, which is sort of, we use that as borrowed views for the property. So you enter to your car, you park in the garage, you take the elevator down, and all the living spaces are down 15 and a half feet, in this level. And then the landscape transitions, you can walk from here, but from the inside, it's really flows onto a terrace, which has water and trees carefully integrated into it to provide a masking sound. A garden, that she is a gardener by heart, so she loves to garden. So she has that, and then sort of centered on her bedroom was this very long lawn that she gets views of it, and can have events, and then just simple levels of terraces that transition down to a main lawn, and then there's a pool with a flush deck at the bottom, and then just native plantings that transition and blur the edge at the property from her yard to the stream. These trees were they're ginkgo trees, which is one of my favorite trees, and they were 22 feet, 23 feet tall, and they were craned on top of from the house, into it. And you can see that all of this opens up, and the entire indoor outdoor experience is almost seamless. Even the paving and the flooring inside is matched, so it's the same color, same texture. These pools are just shallow pools that you can dip your toes in, and they sort of spread throughout, and then the levels of landscape. And that's a view from the pool looking up to the house. So a true sort of seamless integration, creating textures, levels, simple details that really anchor the place in and create that immersive experience into the landscape. Greenbrier, I think I'm doing okay on time, right? It's 7:23, so I'm going to try to do this quick. Greenbrier is a park. It's 26 acres. It's down in Washington. It's close to Washington, D.C., and it took 3.5 years of completion. So there's a trend here. It takes a long time for us to do projects, not because of us, just because of the process and the scale of these. Even though I said it's at 1:10, 1:20, but they are large projects sometimes and very complex. This is located down in DC. Washington, DC is right here, Maryland here, so I live here. And this is the Chesapeake Bay coming in. This is a diagram of, walking radius. It serves the local community. It's a very affluent community right there. And the park is 26 acres with a lot of preservation. This was my first sketch as we got the project. You can see sort of the overall party with a main grass soccer field, and then the sports zone, and then the play zone, and then the center is really the folly where you come in and it's your arrival point, and stormwater is integrated into the park area. There's meadows on all these edges. Out of 24 acres, we only built 9, and we preserved the rest, 16. And they are all streams and buffers that were maintained. All the stormwater is filtered before it goes back into the stream in natural ways. And then really, there's no lighting in this park. It's closed from dusk to dawn. So there's no lighting in this park. And then there's also no water. So we depend on nature. That's why the stormwater management and is very important. Maryland is one of the most stringent states in terms of stormwater management in the country. So it's sort of that. Sometimes I get to do architecture. I call it parkitecture, and some of my quick sketches, and then the evolution of these structures that become sometimes trellises that welcome you, pavilion, and then just moments that you can. All the park materials came from within 50 feet of the site. They're all natural materials. All the planting was grown in the local nursery. And then this is the plan. So you come in, this is a rustic road. It has to keep the rustic feeling along the edges. The parking lot nestled into the woods. Only 70 cars can be parked. Everyone else can, walk to it. The central planted swale and a bridge welcomes you into the main area of the park, and then that's where all the trails launch from it. So there's a loop of trails, walking trails all along, all around these program elements: the soccer field, the basketball, and the volleyball court. And then from here is the journey of the raindrop, which is a children's play area that is basically depicts the journey of the raindrop from the Appalachian Mountains down to the Chesapeake Bay. Rendering. And that was the built. This is the main sort of entry poly with the river birches and grasses and irises. So when the irises bloom, it's all blue. The play structures are designed to relate to the geography and the character of the architecture in that region as the raindrop travels. Interpretive signs educate the kids and the park users. Native grasses, adaptive plantings, they're all filtered. They're placed in places where they filter water and create an environment. And then this was the journey of the raindrop, and we worked with a graphic designer. It was our idea. Julie, my partner, and I did this small presentation, and it was a collaboration between us, the park planner, and the equipment designer, and the graphic designer. And this is how the journey started. It began at the mountains, and it went down as the grade slopes down and the walkway comes down, and there was depiction of water droplets, which were circular pavers that were blue that appeared. And then the natural sort of materials came into this walkway, mounds and boulders, each type related to that geography, and then arches that said words from streams to rivers to the bay. And then so you come down, and this is the Piedmont region, and this is sort of the plateau, and then this is the bay, and some of the elements that became very popular. And these things were custom designed, but also sort of custom designs from a kit of parts. So there was a lot of collaboration going on, and this is the classic Chesapeake Boat, which is a play structure that ends into the Chesapeake Bay. And the play areas, one is 5 to 12 years, and the other one is 2 to 5. So all kids age ranges, but really it's a park for people. Everyone can enjoy it. Seniors can take a walk and a stroll, and parents can sit in the pavilions and watch their kids play. And it's all poured in surfacing, depicting the rivers and the mountains and the bay. And then 3 interpretive signs that talk about the geography, the watershed, and the wildlife. And then a fun element, which was the sounds of the Chesapeake. So you press the button and something lights up, and they teach kids. So a very educational experience and a fun experience for everyone. And those are all native grasses, which are in the stormwater biofilters that create that environment, filter water, and really anchor the place. Last but not the least, most favorite, Fernandez Center at Baltimore, Maryland, at Loyola University, where I've worked. Oops. whoops. We've worked for 27 years on this campus, and this is a story of long-term relationships, and how your good work and your careful work, depending on the scales of the project, it doesn't matter, but you're always careful about it. And we've done projects from the master plan for the entire campus. This is the evergreen campus, because it's full of trees, and you'll see some images. And it has an eclectic, building collection from different eras. And so the landscape really ties it in. We've done a lot of projects, including just planting a few places to creating bridges and creating gateways. And then memorial gardens. On the right bottom is the 9/11 Memorial Garden, was dedicated to people, alumni who lost their lives in the 9/11 event. And so it's the Garden of Peace, but a variety of scales. Literally, we constantly work on this campus, sometimes editing, adding, creating new places. So this project came to us. However, nothing's given to you. We still had to compete for it. This was a collaboration with another really nationally famous firm, Shipley Bulfinch out of Boston, and they were the architects on this project that I'm going to show. So Loyola, again, this is my office. This is where Loyola is. It's sort of between my office and my home. And so very easily accessible. The campus is a sprawling campus. It started right here, and now it's extended to here, and then up here, and then back here. And so, but this is the main historic quad of the campus. And the Fernandez Center sits right on the main East Cold Springs Lane, which is sort of the main road that connects the east and west of the town, and then Charles Street, which connects the south and north of town. So both very important places to be. This was the site. It was, as you can see, the campus is pretty green. This is the campus quad. This is Cold Spring Lane. We did all the projects, this gateway and streetscape all along here a few years ago. And then that's the main connection. There's a bridge that bridges over Charles Street that connects the West Campus to the East Campus. And many buildings by famous architects, Bolin, Savinsky, Jackson, and ASG, and there's other names that, and now Shipley Bulfinch and us. We have done some buildings on here too, but all the landscape on this campus is me and Carol, our work throughout the years. And I started with rendering plans in 2001 when I started, and for days I just rendered plans. I just colored like an intern, and then now I'm designing all these projects. So very grateful for the opportunities. But this is Beatty Hall, which is a historic building. This used to be a parking lot, a prime hall on this main sort of thoroughfare, Main Street, that really was an unattractive hall, and you can see what it looked like. Beatty Hall with the front of parking and horribleness, but for a reason. As funds come, we develop. These were my sketches. As I said, I still draw lots of sketches in 2 and 3 and 4 months. This was the Beatty Hall. The new addition was the CICL, which is the Fernandez Center for Innovation and Collaborative Learning, and then creating the landscape that bridges from the city to the quad, and then creates edges that seamlessly tie into the campus quad, and then screening from the existing parking lots on either side, stormwater treated at the bottom of the building and on the roof, and you'll see it. And then on the edges, creating this vehicular access that ties back into the chapel, and then connection to the Donnelly building. And this is a service yard. It was a grading challenge, and it was in a bad space, but it had to be there because it had to be serving both these buildings. So we had to screen all of that from the street, so the pedestrians have a pleasant experience, and then the campus has a pleasant experience. So lots of different options, quick sketches to study the party of the main areas. There was a grade change from here to there of 8 feet. So traversing that and then making it all accessible, welcoming, and a landscape that performs and filters and creates an environment for students to be outside with nature and collaborate and enjoy, and becomes a campus space that's really a gateway. And that's the plan. Connection, stairs, a ramp. This is the moment. We punctuated the space, this whole plaza, with this very big specimen tree with a platform bench around it, an outdoor classroom that is enclosed in planting and trees, then planting buffers that sort of provide enclosure from the campus quad, but also it's a quiet space. And then a connection that flows through into the new building. The new and the old building were tied together, and then along this axis is the walkway from Donnelly Hall, into so this is sort of the main spine of the project, and then walking back to the other parts of the campus, connecting back to the quad, and then connecting back to the chapel, and the 9/11 garden is here. And we're currently working on expanding or renovating this building and this landscape over here. So the projects just keep happening, and we're very grateful and lucky for that. And then creating a new plaza, new entry to the Beatty Hall as it got renovated. But what I forgot to mention was Loyola is an arboretum. If you have more than 21 species of trees, you can be a level 1 arboretum. We are at 100 species of trees, so we are a level 2 arboretum, and we aspire to grow to a level 3, which would be 500 species of trees and woody plants. So this project added a lot of that in order to have the next step into the arboretum level. And so all trees are marked. They're all there's the digital map of them and information regarding the species of trees, and some visuals of the project, access, the overall plaza space. This also handles and hosts some events, so they can put a tent here. So everything was designed very carefully. This is a cafe terrace. You can see it here that spills out. This is a cafe that spills out into it, and then levels of terraces that are lush in planting, and the stairs. All local materials, a lot of bluestone walls, pavers, campus pavers that we set, benches to sit, and then a whole series of native and adaptive plantings, providing textures and colors and seasonal interests, and 50 trees. So that after the hole was filled in, that's the building, has a green roof. And then there's a lot of sustainable features to it. The green roof, it's 2,000 square feet of green roof on top of the new building. All the bioretention planters are located all along the front facade of the building with native grasses, and they filter the water. And then these terraces also filter water, because everything sheet flows into these, but all carefully placed. And then over 50 native and adaptive trees. And then the outdoor classroom. We also used almost 40% of our pavers, and there's a rainwater cistern that is hidden underneath the plantings that takes all the water and then is used for irrigation purposes. This tree was 8-inch caliper and was craned. It has a 90-inch root ball. So underneath all these pavers, there is root paths and big soil volumes. We want to make sure that the trees live, because they come from a native, soil where in the nurseries they're grown. So when they come into a new landscape, they need to be catered for them. So there's a lot of thinking about soils, soil volumes, providing air spaces for roots to grow into stuff. Lots of details, bluestone, the way the walls are. Some of these walls are very thin, some are very fat. All these details very carefully, sort of thought through, blended in. The materials feel pretty seamless. And then really the big thing was sort of this juxtaposition of the historic and the new, and then the landscape becomes the tying, element. a campus connection. So this is what it was. This is what it is now. So all of these projects are very meaningful, and they're very close to the users, and the university loves it. So again, as I said, the scales for the last two speakers were very different. Mine are very different. They're more local, and dealing with local landscapes and creating places. But the reason I love working with Hort Copeland Mott and where I work is I can always keep in touch with architecture, which is where I began my journey, and contribute. I also serve on the design action team, which is the design leadership in the firm. And so I get to sit on a lot of critiques and for a lot of projects. So I'm very grateful for all of this. And I'm going to stop, and I'm actually going to be quiet and play a video for you. If you at the end of the video there is a slight music, so if you want to, hopefully you can hear it, and if you don't, you can just look at it. But just my journey in 1.5 minutes.
And marimba rhythm start to play, dance with me, take me away. I believe you can touch the shore, the holy coast, swinging more. Like a flower bending in the breeze, bending when the beat.
Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed and I didn't bore you too much. At the end, I want to quickly leave you with these words. I'm not going to read them, but you can, and you can remember. Those are things that are very meaningful to me. As I matured, I think I have. I I remember these things. The most important thing, I remember my teachers, and I think you will find teachers throughout your life. And sometimes you don't know they're teachers, but everyone teaches you something. So remember that always, and have some fun and smile. A smile can get you a lot of things. So I leave you with that. My information is on here. You can note it down. You can follow me on Instagram at home_coke. If you want to see more stuff that I post, I'm pretty active. And thank you very much. This is great. Arti Madam and the whole team at MMCOA. Really appreciate being part of this. I would have, as I said, I would have never thought that I would be speaking to all of you. And with that, I'll take any questions. I went a few minutes over. I'm sorry, but happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Om. It was a very intense and very detailed presentation. Thanks a lot. I would ask Sachin sir to please take the platform for question answers. Audience, please may write your questions in the chat box so that we can take up.
Hello, sir.
Hello. I can't hear you. You're mute.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, before we start the question answer session, I have one comment which I, noticed during your presentations. You talked about landscape, okay, all through 1 hour. But I was so happy that you hardly use this word called sustainability. And in every project it has been practiced. We can see it, we can feel that the way that it has been practiced. But because nowadays the sustainability word has become so called fancy word, and everyone talks about sustainability, but when we come down to practicing it has become quite rare. So I must compliment you and your team for that.
Thank you for noticing that, and it was very intentional because that's what we believe in.
Yes.
And it's sort of the underlying sentiment, and for all our projects and the consideration. So we don't do it for checklists. We do
Yes,
it.
sir, 100%. Because every time we could hear this word called native, then adaptive. So this itself talk about the basics of sustainability, not just using this word as such. We would like to take up a few questions, sir. We have first question from one of our third year student, Mohit Sapre. I'm especially curious about the fact that these projects take quite long amount of time to complete. I was wondering if these projects are as rewarding, if the payment is proportional to the time and efforts one put in. Surprising to get this kind of question from a student actually.
Hi, Mohit. Thanks for a very interesting question. No, we don't get paid. It's we do get paid, and I think the market, I think people are realizing the value of designers more and more, and I think it's a part of continual education to our clients, to the general public of what we do. We've probably fought that battle in architecture, back home in India, and it's the same. But I think people are very aware of what we do, and when you educate them and tell them these stories and show them the success things, I think people are willing to pay. The question regarding the projects, and sometimes people do projects in 15 months, and our projects are longer because they have some complexities. And the fees are built. Generally, we know how long a project's going to go. So when we do our fees, there's escalation built in to all of that. And then there is a lot of clauses put into asking for additional funds if we go beyond the scope. But the reason for the length of these public parks, because they're public projects, they're public money. So we're using the taxpayers' funds. And so there is a long process of approvals. There's a long process of, selecting the correct builders who are not overcharging you. And then again, availability of materials. The last project I did, it was a miracle because it was done all through COVID, from design through construction. All of it was done through COVID. So hopefully I answered your question. I think the scene is getting better, but the complexity and the detail and the oversight involved, and just the availability of materials these days also creates a long length of projects. But the fees are built for sort of those durations of those timelines.
I think well answered, sir, and it's good that our students are becoming more sensitive about these issues as well. We have next question from Jyoti ma'am. Amazing project, sir. Thank you for sharing with us. I would like to know softwares used for site sustainability analysis in park projects. Curious to know if analysis was done in ESRI or ArcGIS Pro. I mean, are using these specific softwares for analyzing probably?
I understand. It's a great question because we my planner partners use a lot of ArcGIS, and some of these park projects. What happens is the original study is done by some other firm, and then we are selected to do more of the detailed design. We use a lot of different project programs, including the CAD and the basic the basic SketchUps and Lumion and all of that. But in terms of sustainability, we do follow the LEED checklist. Even though we may not be submitting projects for LEED, we do try to sort of go through as a checkpoint. But there's a lot of performance-based programs that are coming up that we're experimenting with. We have been recently using the I'm gonna blank at it. It was a program that just came up, which helps you figure out the carbon footprint, as you kind of work on a project. And then other tree GIS mapping softwares that our arborists use that are being used. So it's a combination of different things. As I said, sustainability is sort of an underlying sentiment, and so some of the standard tools were used. But ArcGIS, I don't use that as much, but our planner partners use it in their project. Hopefully that was an okay answer.
Thank you, sir. We have next question from Asmita ma'am, one of our faculty members. Can you throw light on how critical is the role of landscape architect in design stage of a project? Probably she wants to know the role of landscape architect in the design stage of architectural design process.
It is very important because I think we're all dealing with the land. Every architect is dealing with the land. And I always say we're not building UFOs. Our buildings are not floating up in the sky. They're always touching the ground. And so I think having a landscape architect on your team is extremely important. Of course, I'm a landscape architect. I'm always going to say that. But at the same time, when I look back at a few years, when I started working, there was always a consideration of having a landscape architect, be part of the team. We help shape the site. There is certain critical things that we architects may not look at because we're focused in the building a lot and exterior skin of the building. So it's extremely important. I think I'm lucky that I get to be part of these teams. And I think also, again, educating your architect colleagues, your engineering colleagues to the benefits of having a landscape architect on the team is very important. So it's a continual education. It may not organically happen on every project, but I think that is part of our job as professionals.
Yes, sir. We'll take up next question from Abhay Bosle, sir. You have successfully established yourself into a context with extremely high level of design and execution standards, perhaps the best in the world. Do you think it's difficult for you to work outside the US, where things are not that organized?
I was praying that none of my friends asked me hard questions. That's a very hard question, but an important question. I actually worked on a project in Pune. It was a concept. It was a concept for a residential project, and I think as the world gets closer and closer because of social media and the connections that we have, I think it is hard because the ways of working here are very different than the ways of working in India or some other countries. So you have to really learn the local, process. And so yes, it is going to be hard, but I'm Indian. I can deal with all of that. So if I have a good partner, a good local partner, I think it is very possible. You just have to work out the logistics of the fees and and sort of the oversight and sort of keeping the design intent. So I think again, coming from a collaborative practice, I think you need good partners to be able to do that. But I don't think it's not possible. I would love to work more in India if I can, or other countries, as we grow and sort of spread the practice. By the way, you're very kind. Thank you very much for complimenting, but I think I have long ways to go in terms of being the best in the world. And that is not the intent of my practice. Our practice is to do good, and then whatever happens. But thank you very much.
Yes. We'll take up a new question. I think this question probably will come to all architects who are especially Indians who are working outside India. His question is from Ramakant. Nowadays, there is a concern about discrimination, probably for Indians as well as for Asians. What is your say on this, especially for fresh students who are willing to go out and venture into the international markets?
That's a very good question, very important. So thank you very much for that. I think the world is changing. When I came here, it wasn't, I wouldn't call it discrimination, but it was lack of knowledge about a certain culture. My first presentation at the city of Baltimore or here as a student, everyone was blank. They looked at me, they looked at my drawings. They could not understand a word I said because I spoke very, very fast. I was told that I need to slow down. Fast forward, I'm very slow now. But today, in the world of equality, diversity, and inclusion, there is a lot of awareness about different cultures. There's a lot of awareness of people with different abilities. And I think, especially in the United States, this has created a great awareness about different cultures, people, the way people think, the way people behave, the way people use the space. So it's an important thing. It's an ongoing process of education, again, to the general public and to the world. But I think you cannot stop thinking about it. I think we all have to, in our rest of our lives, we have to continue to do that as humans, as designers, and create spaces that are for all. They're accessible to all. They're enjoyable to all. They cater to different communities, and sort of be respectful. So it's sort of a personal responsibility. But again, these movements, as you see all throughout the world, are sort of parallel going on, and I think that is going to change the world. It already has, but it cannot stop. I think it needs to continue.
Yes, very well said, sir. We have next question from Rishikesh Ashtekar, sir. Fantastic work home. Amazed at the sheer scale of projects you're working on. Can you discuss a bit on inclusivity in public parks? Can anyone just walk in the public parks, as most of them are open? Most of them are having open access as against the ones we have here in India.
Great to see you, Rishikesh. Hoping to see you soon. And thanks for the question. It's a great question. So most of the park projects, actually all of the park projects are public. And when I say public, they are accessible to all. You don't need a ticket to go into this park. And they are open. They do have, depending on where they are, certain urban situations or certain rural settings. As I said, some parks are closed from dusk to dawn. And so you can't go in there, but there is no gate that prevents you from going in there. There is signs that you shouldn't be in the park because it's dark and unsafe, maybe, and people might hide, but they're all open to public. Speaking of camp and going back to to campuses, all of our campuses, or at least the ones I worked on, are open to public. and campuses are like public parks. So you don't need a ticket or an entry pass to get into any of these. So they are physically accessible to them, and they are also accessible to people of all abilities. Hopefully that answers my question or your question.
Yes. We have next comment from one of our alumni who is 91 pass out, Ravindra Deshpande sir. Uh, he said it was a nice presentation. He's seen the context around your projects on Google Maps and other things. He wants to know about the routes that do not seem to have disturbed the paved surfaces around which normally is seen here. I believe this is because of having adequate space for the roots to breathe. I would like to know, I would like you to throw some light on these points.
Sure, that's a great question. So there's rarely any tap roots in the in the world. All these tree roots, they grow sort of at the surface. They generally go. The rule of thumb is they grow 12 to 15 inches below the root surface. Oh, sorry, the paved surface. Special things that we do, and this is part of sort of a lot of research that has been done over the years in the field of landscape architecture and tree preservation and new tree plantings and sort of streetscapes. We use a lot of different tools. Every county, every jurisdiction has their own rules, but providing, so I'll take a few examples on streetscapes that are along all the city sidewalks. There's a minimum width of walkway and a minimum width of tree plantings that you have to follow. And then in terms of the volume, every tree gets a certain volume of soil. A lot of times when in tight urban spaces, even if you see a tree pit on the surface, they're under the paving, they're connected with soil zones that are continuous through the streetscape. And then there's root barriers put on either side so that you almost provide a channel for the roots to grow underneath and not pop the paving. Second, consideration of paving and its base is very important. A lot of times, concrete slab with pavers on top and the right sort of construction technique will prevent the roots from, popping up the sidewalks. We also, as I mentioned in that Loyola project, we also do something called as root paths, which are basically just trenches that are connecting the lawn areas to the tree pit areas to the planting areas, which actually has good soil in between these trenches, and the roots are expected to sort of follow the path of nutrition and kind of connect back into the open areas. So there's a few different things. We also are looking at these silva cells, if you have heard of them. They're big, large crates that are put underneath the paving that also support the paving, but they create a bigger soil volume underneath the sidewalk. And it's silva cells, SILVA cells. You can Google them, and it's a new technique that has been used. We also use something called a structural soil. So the West Shore Park project, all the trees that were in the paving, underneath the paving, which was concrete based with asphalt pavers, all of these areas had structural soil. And structural soil was developed by Cornell University and a few of the research experts over there. And it actually is larger aggregate with soil in between, to put it in layman's terms, that allows the roots to go through it. It's structural because it's supporting the paving above. And so you've created this whole volume of nutrients and soils underneath the paving that allow for these trees to sustain and not pop the sidewalks that you generally see. And that happens here too in older cities and older sidewalks that are existing that wasn't practiced. So we're learning from what was done before and what was unsuccessful.
Thank you, sir. We have next question from one of our fourth year student. You kind of answered this question, but again, since he's requesting, maybe you can summarize that. His question is from Harsh Rathod. landscape architects often work with public spaces. I had a question on how do you address inclusivity, accessibility, and the diverse needs of various user groups in your design.
It's a good question. Thank you. I think I addressed it, but I think I can go into a little more detail. By code, all public parks have to be at least have spaces that are 50% accessible. So there's obviously great change in a lot of these projects, as you saw, but there has to be routes that an able person can access, and then people with special needs can access. So there is always handicap ramps. There's always sloped walkways. There's always one connection from the edges that allows people to come in. We try to make sure wherever possible. Sometimes it's just a constraint of a site that it's impossible to do it, but all our projects have accessible pathways into it. In terms of furnishings, site furnishings are also important. There is certain guidelines and rules that we follow where, for example, I'm doing 5 picnic tables or 6 picnic tables, and the 6 picnic tables have 4 chairs around them. At least 50% of them have to have an ADA accessible picnic table where a person in a wheelchair can come into to the table and be able to socialize with that. So not going into many more details, but that's sort of a norm over here. And I think we want to make spaces that are inclusive in terms of the accessibility, the furnishings, the variety of seating, shade, sun, and because sometimes when you come from a different culture, you may not like the hot sun. You might want to be in shade all the time. So there's a lot of different things that happen, but just kind of details of it. Always accessible. All parks are accessible, and all furnishings have an option. And then the last thing is to provide a lot of different options in terms of seating for people who are tall or short or unable to sit down or stand. So considerations of bar height tables and regular dining tables and seat benches that are only 18 inches tall, or seat benches that are 21 inches tall at the max, where a person in wheelchair can slide onto the seat bench and have the same experience as other people who are visiting the park.
So I have one question from my side. Normally, I ask this question to landscape architects. Where do landscape architects draw a line between a design landscape and not so designed landscape? I mean, where does that nature factor come into place, which is not designed, especially in the context of one of your projects? I may pronounce it wrongly. Some Greenbrier Park, I think so. And you said there was no water supply for this project and no light for this project. So probably over the longer period, we may have to depend on nature for it to take care of itself. So how would you like to comment on this?
That's very interesting. I think landscapes mature and they adapt. Everything you put into a new landscape is foreign, when it comes to it. With Greenbrier Park, it was a county requirement to not have water, and so the soil sections, the lawn, all of that were designed with deep soil sections in order to provide sort of the root mass, provide enough soil for these foreign plantings to adapt to, and then, as I said, blurring the lines, so using meadows and other techniques to sort of not draw a line, but blur the line between what was existing and natural to what is man-made in it. But again, every plant material takes at least 18 to 20 months to establish. And so I think it's a process, but if it's built right, it's designed correctly, I think you can blur the lines, and there's continual maintenance. There is no landscape that has no maintenance. There can be low maintenance landscapes, but also using native and adaptive species is very important.
No, it's so good to see I mean, some of the grass that you talked about, native and adaptive grass, it's not only that green that we see, in the landscape. It's many of them are brown and they were so very well merged with the overall context. I mean, that's where the role of landscape architect comes into place probably.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a questions on behalf of students, like what advice as an alumni would you like to give to the students?
Well, make a lot of friends and keep in touch with them. It makes life much easier. I think, as I said, I think be honest to yourself. Find a passion. Always believe in a cause, and really, kind of implement in your practice. It's a learning. Life is learning, and I think somebody said in the last talk that it doesn't stop. So I think being open to learning from different people, different cultures, I think it's very important. But find a cause that you believe in, and I think follow your heart. And not everything in life, if you can help it, is so serious. There's seriousness about your work, but I think we need to have fun. We need to make sure that we are enjoying the process. We are not getting bogged down by the stresses of everyday life. And so, having hobbies, having a passion, having a lot of friends, sort of distracting yourself with other things, and then really staying away from social media. I haven't figured a way to stay away from social media yet, but I think social media can bring a lot of stress. It can also educate you, but it also can bring a lot of stress in terms of that. But I think, and as I said earlier in my last slide, don't forget your teachers. They have taught you something that you probably won't realize today, but 20 years later, when there's a problem and you're thinking for yourself, you might remember one or two things that will help you solve the problem. It's the stories we hear in our childhood. They come back after 40, 50 years to you when you're in trouble. And I think that is my biggest advice.
Great. Hearing directly from alumni about their experience in the real world is an invaluable opportunity. By talking to students about your journey and sharing the wisdom you have picked up along the way is an inspiration to everybody here in the audience and out there. Thank you, Om. I greatly appreciate the presentation you gave. It was nothing short of incredibly informative and interesting. It was so detailed out, and it was in depth, I would say. And I'm sure your enlightening words have inspired so many out here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.
Yeah, I request the audience, please fill out the feedback form, which is already given in the chat. Yeah, thank you. And tomorrow again, we meet with our fourth speaker at the same time. He is architect Shri Shah from Australia. So see you all there. Thank you.